Good afternoon and welcome to this third Vietnamese language class for travellers. My name is Mark Boyer, and today, rather strangely, this third class is actually coming to you not from Vietnam but from Cambodia. I'm sitting at the foot of the Bapoon Temple at Angkor Wat, one of the Angkor temples, and it's absolutely beautiful here this afternoon. And this is just where I happen to be. And the reason we're doing this little diversion, because you may recall from the last lesson, we're supposed to be talking about food, and we will be talking about food in just a moment. But after the previous lesson, I had a little bit of feedback about the pronunciation of one of those very, very important words in the Vietnamese language, the name Nguyen. Nguyen, and it appears, and I think I would agree with those who've pointed this out, that in the previous class I kind of said that name a couple of different ways. I said it correctly, which is the northern sort of correct way, which is Nguyen, NG, the Nguyen. But I also softened it up, and today I just wanted to sort of discuss a little workaround. There's probably not that much chance that as a traveller you're going to conquer the pronunciation of the word Nguyen with the zonga, which is that one that goes up and down. Nguyen, you're probably not going to get all that sort of throat stuff happening in the course of a few days of practicing Vietnamese before you travel. But it is important, no matter really where you live now, that you have a tolerable way of pronouncing the name Nguyen, because for Vietnamese it's much more common than Smith on a per capita basis. It's as we've already talked about, it's the most common name in Vietnam, and I think it might even be the most common name, or one of the most common names, in countries like Australia, the US, France, Canada, anywhere where there's a big Vietnamese community. So it's important that we all know how to say this name, and rather than sort of obsess about getting it exactly right, Nguyen, and when I say exactly right, that's a northern pronunciation. Southerners say it a little more gently. I'm going to sort of give you some hints on a little workaround that means that your friends who go by the name Nguyen will be very impressed, but it may not necessarily be perfect, and it'll be much easier for you to come up with. To get right. So instead of, as a little workaround, and this is a bit more like the way Southerners say it anyway, so it's not completely wrong, let's go with Nguyen, which you might spell N-W-I-E-N, Nguyen in English, Nguyen. So you could just say Mr. Nguyen, Mrs. Nguyen, and it's not technically perfect, but it's a lot better than most of the variations I've heard of this name, which in Australia I've heard people whose name is Nguyen being called Nguyen, which has a certain phonetical kind of elegance, or at least accuracy to it. It does kind of look like Nguyen, but it's wrong. There's also Nguyen, I've heard, and probably the most common is Nguyen. All three of those are way off. And if you want to get very close, and if you want to impress your Vietnamese friends whose name is spelt Nguyen, then I would suggest at least start by pronouncing it as Nguyen, N-W-I-E-N, Nguyen. That's a very, very acceptable compromise. As I say, it's not that far off the way the Southerners say the name Nguyen. And it'll impress them immensely, and it'll impress everybody when you're travelling in Vietnam as well. So that's enough of that little diversion. Let's get back to talking about food. We'll leave this fallen capital at Siem Reap and head to Vietnam's fallen capital in Hue, and I'll head back and have a shower because I'm very, very sweaty after climbing over temples all day. So back to Hue we go. Let's talk about a basic food vocabulary now, and we've already talked about the most important food word. If you only learn one food word in Vietnam, I suggest it be cơm, cơm, C, O with a squiggle, M. So how do you pronounce the C letter in Vietnamese? And I need to tell you again, if this is your first Rusty Compass language class, I need to emphasise once again that I'm completely unqualified to teach Vietnamese, or anything else for that matter. But I have a reasonable Hopefully, at the level I'm teaching here, I think I'm safe. I hope I'm safe. So how do you say the C letter in Vietnamese? Well, to my mind, it's a split between a C in the English language and a G. So it's a gentle C. Gum, gum. And you'll notice O is the second letter, but it's pronounced instead of O or ah. So Vietnamese, as I mentioned, I think in the previous class, the O sound has three pronunciations. One is ah, the second is o, and the third is So when you see the squiggle on the O, it's an sound. Gum, gum, gum. Okay, another food that you're definitely going to be enjoying while you're in Vietnam is pho. You may well have enjoyed pho before you travel to Vietnam. P-H-O, and you'll notice again the O has a squiggle, which means it's pronounced pho. Well, it's not pronounced pho, it's pronounced pho, because in addition to the O having a squiggle, there's the rounded tone, which is zo high, over the top of the word pho. So that means you actually go around. So you don't say pho, like F-U-R, you actually go around and say pho, pho, pho. So you'd say ăn pho or ăn cơm, eat rice or eat noodles. Pho are those fabulous, is that fabulous noodle soup that, as I say, you've probably already enjoyed at home, and if you haven't, you'll certainly be enjoying it here in Vietnam. So that's pronounced pho, pho. So let's talk about a few varieties of pho or cơm, and they'll help you to understand a few more basic words. The first is ba, so pho ba. So that's beef, ba. So the O in beef doesn't have anything over the top of it, so it's said ah. In the case of ba, it goes down, so it's pho ba, pho ba. And so that's beef. Did I say this already? Ba means beef. So pretty important that I tell you what the words I'm teaching you actually mean in English. Ba, pho ba is beef noodle soup. And cơm, another popular dish with rice, is chicken rice, which the Vietnamese call cơm gà, cơm gà. And again, you'll see signs for this all over the country. Cơm is rice, as we've said. Gà is chicken. And you'll notice over the word chicken, there's a falling tone, as Nguyen. So in the falling tone, you fall. So gà. It's not ga or ga, it's ga, ga, down, pho ga. Okay, so we've learned a few words there. We've got pho, cơm, gà, ba. And so where to next? Probably a couple of other simple food words you need to know. Cá is fish. Cá. So you might ask for cơm cá, which is going to be rice and fish. I don't know that the Viets ask for that very often, but it's possible. If you want a piece of fish, then you're going to say, I want some tôi muốn ăn cơm cá, which is rice and fish. Cá. A couple of other essentials. Probably the most important meat in the Vietnamese diet is pork. And pork is actually pronounced, or there are two different words for pork, one in the south and one in the north. In the north, the word for pork is thịt lợn. So thịt, T-H-I-T, actually means meat. So any meat. Thịt bò is beef, thịt bò. Thịt lợn is pork. But in the south, in Saigon, they have another word, and that's thịt heo, which means pork. So my Vietnamese friends are enjoying the class. So yes, there's two different words for pork in Vietnamese. Heo, hey lợn. Lợn, you'll notice, once again, to reinforce, we've got the O, but again, it's got the squiggle, which means it's an sound, rather than an O sound as we'd know it in English. And it's also got the dot, so again, it's that truncated lut, tit lut, tit lut. Kind of sounds harsh, right? Tit lut. There's a lot going on in the throat as well. I'm not sure how easy it is to kind of pick that up off the blocks, but give it a try. Tit lut, or what is definitely easier, the Saigon or southern version, tit heo, tit heo. Okay, so they're the essential meats, and we've also included fish in there. We could go on, but rather than get too complicated, I think another key word that you're going to need to know is zao. Zao is fruit. Zao is vegetables, I beg your pardon. Zao, R-A-U, zao. And if you're a vegetarian, you're going to want to eat a lot of zao. And to say vegetarian, a vegetarian in Vietnamese is ăn chay. Ăn chay. That means a vegetarian. Something else not to overlook while you're traveling in Vietnam is fruit. Vietnamese fruit is absolutely delicious, and particularly in the south you've got an incredible array of fruit, and I eat fruit here every day. The sort of tropical fruit that comes, well, a lot of it comes out of the Mekong Delta, is really, really special. So make sure you include daily fruit or fruit juices in your diet, because they're cheap and they're really, really delicious. I have a couple of favourite fruits. Now, fruit in Vietnamese is, in the south it's trái cây, and in the north it's hoa quả. So they're the two words for fruit. Once again, there's a difference between the northern and the southern version. And a couple of favourite fruits. My favourite fruit that I only discovered in Vietnam is bưởi, pomelo. And I eat pomelo, well, if I can, every day. Pomelo is absolutely delicious. It's one of these incredibly refreshing fruits. And the Vietnamese tell me it has a wonderful kind of health benefits as well. So I eat lots of bưởi. And bưởi in English is pomelo, but you can drink pomelo juice. Nước bưởi is pomelo juice. The mango, which is xoài in Vietnamese, xoài is also absolutely spectacular, and there are tons of others. I won't name all the fruits. Of course, Vietnam has plenty of delicious bananas as well. Banana is chuối, and I'll give you one more fruit, and that is pineapple. Thơm. Fresh pineapples out of the Mekong Delta are also magnificent. Oh, and the northerners call thơm dừa. So it's thơm in the south, and in the north it's dừa. And the other thing to make sure you enjoy lots of while you're in Vietnam is coconut juice. It's really cheap and it's delicious as well. And coconut juice is called nước. We've talked about nước before, fluid. Nước dừa. That's coconut juice. Nước dừa. So enjoy those fabby fruits. Okay, so that's a really basic set of food words for you. A couple of other useful words before we wrap up this second class. Drinking. So, drink is uống nước. Nước is fluid, water. Uống nước. Now, nước is an interesting one because nước is also the Vietnamese word for country, nation. Like, Vietnam is nước Việt Nam. So the Vietnamese will say, for Australia, for example, nước Úc. For the US, nước Mỹ. For England, nước Anh. For, say, Germany, nước Đức. So, nước means fluid, but it also means country. So actually the word for country in Vietnam is đất nước, which is land and water, which is kind of nice. Đất nước or earth and water. Đất nước Việt Nam or đất nước Úc or đất nước Mỹ. So đất nước Mỹ is the United States, the country of the United States or the nation of the United States. But we're talking about food, so let's get back to food and drinking. And uống nước, uống nước, uống nước. I hope my camera just hasn't done something strange. So that's the basic words for drinking. You want to drink, you say tôi muốn uống nước. Tôi rất muốn uống nước. I want to drink water or drink fluid. So the word for mineral water is nước suối. Nước suối. So when you're drinking bottled water, you'll be drinking nước suối. Nước suối. I hope I'm not about to be run over by a motorbike. Okay, so what else? You want to drink a beer? You need to drink beer. It's really easy. B-I-A, pronounced beer. Uống beer. Now the Vietnamese have their own special fresh beer. Beer tươi, fresh beer. Beer tươi. Beer tươi. And it's called bia hơi. Bia hơi. So beer is a very easy word to remember in Vietnamese because it's beer, but it's spelled differently, B-I-A. Cafe is also easy because it's cafe. So coffee, you're going to uống, go back to that word drink, uống, cafe. Tôi muốn uống cafe. And a cafe is also called a cafe. So that's pretty easy as well. Lastly, I just wanted to talk a little bit about soups. Soup is an essential part of the Vietnamese diet. So if you're ever invited to a Vietnamese home for a meal, they will always serve you a soup. And the soup is known as canh. Canh, C-A-N-H. Now what's interesting as a tourist, when you travel in Vietnam, if you're not careful, you end up eating in tourist restaurants all the time and you actually don't really get to eat Vietnamese food. As a simple rule, I suggest you, if you want to eat real Vietnamese food, eat in restaurants where there are Vietnamese. If you're in a Vietnamese restaurant and there aren't any Vietnamese, I think you can probably suspect that this is not much of a Vietnamese restaurant. It doesn't mean it's not a good restaurant because a lot of those tourist restaurants are okay. But unfortunately in the tourist areas of Saigon, Hanoi, even here in Hue and Hoi An and all the popular tourist spots, there's a whole class of restaurant that has built a kind of tourist cuisine, and usually they're going to serve you Vietnamese food, hamburgers, pizzas, everything. And what's interesting, and the reason I raise this when talking about canh, is that they won't have canh on the menu because tourists don't know for the most part what canh is. But canh is a really vital part of any Vietnamese meal. And it's a soup. It's usually often made of vegetable broth. It sometimes has a bit of meat thrown in as well. It's absolutely delicious. I love it. And for the Vietnamese, it's the thing that adds sort of moisture and fluid to the whole meal. Otherwise the meal is kind of dry. So canh is really important, and make sure you look out and try for some canh while you're traveling in Vietnam. But as I say, remember that rule as well. If you're in Vietnam, eat in restaurants where there are Vietnamese as much as possible, because that's where you're going to be eating real Vietnamese food. And the other soup that the Vietnamese love to have is hot pot, and that's pronounced lo, 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 hot pot, and it's got that zo high again, pronounced lo. Okay, well that's the end of our very simple little introduction to food. I hope you found that useful, and I hope you have fabulous food experiences during your travels. Of course, food is one of the great magnets of travel to Vietnam, but remember that rule: eat in restaurants where there are Vietnamese. So we'll wrap up today's class with a visit to a local bún thịt nướng stall. That's bún thịt nướng, bún being these round noodles, thịt nướng being grilled pork in this case, but thịt means meat actually. bún thịt nướng, which also consists of plenty of greenery and a sauce and peanuts. And it's a delicious, simple dish that's not really special just to Hue, but all through the south of Vietnam. Thanks very much for your time, and I'll see you again soon.